I was driving home slow because Rachel called at 6:45 and said, "Sorry, babe, last-minute client dinner. Don't wait up." Her voice sounded tired but proud. I believed her. I trusted her. She had always been the kind of person to work hard and care for Lily and keep our home steady. It was a small thing, the call, but it felt right. I told her okay and thought about dinner, about homework, about the school photo on the fridge. I did not think about betrayal. I did not think about lies. I passed a bistro without meaning to. The street was warm with evening lights. I slowed because of pothole, and my headlights caught a silver car in front of the bistro. I saw Rachel's taillights first. My chest dropped like I had fallen. My hands gripped the wheel hard. I pulled into a parking space across the street and watched her car through the window. I felt like my feet had turned to stone. Inside the bistro, through the big glass, I saw Rachel laughing with Mr. Carson. The teacher's smile looked easy and too familiar. He leaned close. She reached and touched his hand. Not just a brush, not a casual pat. Her fingers felt like they had a right to be there. The touch was slow. It was the sort of touch I had given her after long nights at work or when flea markets left us laughing. I remembered those nights and the softness of her cheek and how safe I felt. That memory hit me like a cold wind. I sat there across the street and watched their laughter. I watched Rachel throw her head back the way she used to with me. The scene scalded me. It was not business. It was not late paperwork or talk of lesson plans. It was closeness and quiet and a kind of joy I had thought was ours. I felt hollow. My mouth tasted like pennies. I wanted to get out and walk to them, to ask, to demand, to shout. Instead, I breathed shallow and kept my car running. I wanted to record everything, but I couldn't move. If you want more true revenge stories like this, hit subscribe now. I stayed parked across the street, my headlights dimmed so they wouldn't notice me. The sound of the city faded until all I could see was the two of them, Rachel and Mr. Carson, talking like old lovers. He leaned close, whispering something that made her cover her mouth, pretending to hide a laugh. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of it. I couldn't believe it. My wife, my Rachel, sitting across from our daughter's teacher, as if I didn't exist. I stared so long the glass window became a mirror. For a moment, I saw my own reflection, the face of a fool. The same man who made Rachel coffee every morning, who fixed her car last month, who packed Lily's lunch every day. I had trusted her with everything, and now I was watching her give parts of herself that belonged to me to someone else. She reached for his hand again, slower this time, and her thumb traced the skin like she was memorizing it. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it was nothing, maybe an innocent moment, but I couldn't lie to myself anymore. That touch was the kind that says, "You're mine." Mr. Carson said something that made her blush. Her eyes softened, and I felt my heart drop right through me. Every laugh, every look, every quiet second between them tore through my chest like a knife. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the ease of it. The way she looked so comfortable breaking my world apart. A waiter brought them wine. Rachel raised her glass, her ring glinting under the light. She didn't even take it off. My mind raced through every memory, trying to figure out when this started, what I missed, how I didn't see it coming. I didn't move until they stood up. He brushed a strand of her hair behind her ear before she left. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The world outside stayed still, but inside me, everything broke. Rachel tossed her head back and laughed again. The sound muffled through the glass, but sharp enough to cut straight into me. I remembered that laugh. It was the same one she used the night we met, when I spilled coffee on my shirt, and she teased me until I smiled. That memory used to make me warm inside. Now it burned. She looked so alive sitting across from him, her face glowing under the soft restaurant light, her eyes bright with a joy that wasn't for me anymore. I gripped the steering wheel, staring through a windshield like a man watching his life dissolve in front of him. Every small detail hurt. The way she leaned toward him, the way his hand rested near hers, ready to catch it again. I wanted to be angry, to storm in there and expose him, but I couldn't move. My body refused to listen to the storm inside my chest. Our daughter's teacher. I whispered to no one. How long? The question floated into the air and came back empty. Lily adored Mr. Carson. She drew him in crayon pictures, talked about how funny he was, how nice. The thought made my throat close. What would it do to her when she learned that her mother was betraying us both with that same man? I couldn't watch anymore. I started the car, the sound too loud in the quiet street. I drove off before Rachel could see me, my mind numb, hands tight on the wheel. Streetlights slid across the hood like flashes of memory. Our wedding day, Lily's first steps, every promise Rachel had ever whispered to me in the dark. Each one turned to dust as I passed the red lights. By the time I reached home, I didn't feel anything. The laughter I'd heard inside that restaurant still echoed in my ears. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat in silence, knowing that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. When Rachel came home later that night, the clock read 10:17. I sat on the couch pretending to read, the TV murmuring low. My heart thudded with every sound, the jingle of her keys, the click of her heels, the soft sigh she always made when stepping inside. She smelled like wine and something else, something sharp and foreign. She smiled when she saw me. "You're still up?" Her tone was light, casual. She leaned down and kissed my cheek, the way wives do when everything's fine. The scent of cologne clung to her jacket. Not mine. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, hanging her purse on the hook. "Perfect," I said, forcing a smile. My voice sounded strange, hollow. She kicked off her shoes and walked into the kitchen, humming. "Sorry about dinner. It ran late. My client's project was a mess." I nodded, pretending to believe her. I watched her open the fridge, pour water, and drink it in long gulps. Her hand trembled slightly. Maybe guilt, maybe nerves. She caught me looking. "What?" "Nothing," I said, closing the book. "Just glad you're home safe." She smiled again, soft, familiar. Fake. "Me too." Upstairs, I lay awake beside her, listening to her even breathing. I wanted to ask her outright, to shout, "Who is he?" But I couldn't. I needed to be sure. If I accused her and I was wrong, I'd lose her forever. But if I was right, I'd lose her anyway. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. She turned over half asleep and muttered, "Work email." She didn't check it. I stared at the screen until it went dark. I turned my face toward the ceiling and waited for sleep, but none came. My thoughts twisted and looped, building plans I wasn't ready to admit to myself yet. She slept soundly, dreaming of something I no longer shared. I watched her and whispered, "Perfect." It sounded like a lie. Rachel was still asleep when I woke up. The early light spilled through the curtains and touched her face. For a second, I almost forgot what I'd seen. Then it hit me again, her laugh, her hand in his, the way she looked at him like he was the only person in the world. I got out of bed quietly and went downstairs. My hands shook as I poured coffee. The spoon rattled against the cup, the sound small but sharp in the quiet kitchen. Her phone sat on the counter. I stared at it. Locked, of course. She had changed her password last month for security reasons. I tried her birthday, our anniversary, Lily's name. None worked. Her laptop was locked too. It asked for a fingerprint I didn't have. So I went for something simpler. Her planner was on the table. Neat as always. Rachel loved to write everything down. Meetings, errands, grocery lists. It was her way of keeping life in order. I flipped through the pages until I saw it. In her looping handwriting. Parent meeting, Carson, 7 p.m. The same night, she'd said she had a client dinner. My throat tightened. Proof. Not enough to end a marriage, but enough to show me I wasn't imagining things. I took a photo of the page with my phone and closed the planner exactly how I found it. When she came downstairs, she smiled like nothing had happened. "Morning," she said, brushing my shoulder as she passed. "Morning," I answered, watching her pour coffee. She didn't look at me long. "Busy day?" "Yeah," I said. "You?" "Always." She smiled again and kissed my cheek, her lips warm, her eyes unreadable. After she left, I sat at the table, staring at her planner. The neat blue ink looked innocent. But now I knew. The woman I loved had lied straight to my face. And I had no idea how deep it went. That was the morning I promised myself I'd find the truth, no matter what it cost. The next day, I drove Lily to school, trying to act normal. She sat in the back seat, singing softly to the radio, her small voice breaking to the storm in my head. I kept smiling at her through the mirror, but my chest felt heavy. The school parking lot was crowded as always, cars sliding in and out, kids running toward the gate. And then I saw him. Mr. Carson stood by the entrance, waving to students as they passed. He was wearing the same gray jacket from the restaurant. His smile looked warm, professional. But I couldn't unsee the man sitting across from my wife 2 nights ago. "Morning, Mr. Carson," Lily said cheerfully, hopping out of the car. "Good morning, Lily. Did you finish your project?" She nodded proudly. "Mom said you'll help me take pictures for it." His eyes flicked up to mine. "Ah, yes. Your mom mentioned that. She said she'd email me the photos tonight." His tone was smooth, polite, but it cut deep. I forced a nod. "Right. Thanks for helping her." "No problem, Mr. Miller. She's a bright kid." He smiled again, too easily, then turned back to the children. I watched him as I pulled away, my stomach twisting. She said she'd email me, he'd said. It was so casual, but it told me everything. They were still in touch. They were careful, but not careful enough. The drive to work blurred. Every red light felt endless. My thoughts circled the same question. How long? I replayed their laughter, that touch, the way Rachel smelled of cologne. At lunch, I stared at my sandwich until the bread went dry. My co-workers laughed about something across the table, and I couldn't join in. The world had gone gray. That night, Rachel texted me, running late, need to stop by the store. I read it 3 times, my pulse pounding. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to stop thinking like this. But trust doesn't grow back once it's cracked. It only waits to shatter. That night, I sat on the porch with my sister, Monica. She stopped by to drop off a birthday gift for Lily, a pink backpack covered in stars. We watched the sun dip behind the houses. The air soft with that quiet that comes before people turn on their porch lights. I hadn't planned to tell her, but the words just spilled out. I saw Rachel, I said, my voice low, at the bistro with Mr. Carson. Monica blinked. Her coworker? Our daughter's teacher. Her mouth fell open. What? Are you sure it wasn't something innocent? A meeting or school thing? I shook my head. She touched his hand, laughed with him. It wasn't business. She leaned forward, studying my face like she was afraid to ask the next question. Did you talk to her about it? No, not yet. I rubbed my temples. If I'm wrong, I'll destroy everything for nothing. But if I'm right... Monica sighed. Ethan, listen. If she's lying, find out why before you explode. Maybe there's more going on than you know. Her words made sense, but they didn't comfort me. The image of Rachel's hand resting over his wouldn't leave my mind. I can't stop seeing it, I said quietly, every time I closed my eyes. Monica put a hand on my shoulder. You've always been calm. Don't lose that now. Just be smart. Watch. Don't accuse until you're sure. I nodded, though inside I was already past calm. My thoughts were moving like gears, slow, steady, and dangerous. When Monica left, I stood outside a while longer, staring at the street where Rachel's car would soon appear. I told myself I would wait, that I would collect proof, not anger, because the truth didn't need shouting. It just needed to be seen. And once I saw it, I would never unsee it again. I couldn't stop thinking about what Monica said. Be smart. Those 2 words echoed in my head all day. So that night, when Rachel was upstairs helping Lily with homework, I sat down at our shared computer. I searched for software I'd only heard about before, something called a keylogger. It was simple enough to install, hidden behind a photo editing update. Once I pressed activate, every word she typed would quietly send a copy to my email. I didn't feel proud. I felt sick, but I needed truth more than pride. The days crawled by. Rachel smiled like nothing had changed. She hummed in the kitchen, packed Lily's lunch, and texted during dinner when she thought I wasn't watching. I acted normal, but my stomach burned. 3 nights later, the first report arrived. A list of words and phrases filled the screen. Searches, logins, bits of emails. Then one line froze me. From Rachel Miller to Carson@d@ridgeway.edu subject. Last night. My pulse hammered. I opened it. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I stared at the screen, every breath heavy. There was no misunderstanding this time. It wasn't a work dinner. It wasn't some harmless friendship. It was real. For a long time, I just sat there, letting the glow of the monitor light my face. The room felt colder than before. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, even the sound of Lily laughing in her sleep from upstairs, all of it pressed on me. Rachel came downstairs for water. I closed the laptop fast. She smiled. Still working, babe? Yeah, I whispered. If only she knew what I was working on. The words from her email played in my head like a broken record. I can't stop thinking about you. I reread it a dozen times, hoping I'd misread something, some hidden clue that meant it wasn't what it looked like. But there wasn't. It was clear as sunlight. My wife was in love with another man. Shock burned first, then numbness, and finally something colder, a calm that wasn't really calm. The kind that comes before a storm. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I planned. I saved every email, every message. I took screenshots, dated them, and stored them in a folder hidden inside my work files. I labeled it Taxes 2023. I even sent copies to my personal email under a fake name. At breakfast the next morning, Rachel kissed my cheek like always. I almost laughed at the act. You seem quiet, she said. Just tired. I replied, smiling thinly. She talked about Lily's science fair project, about work deadlines, about her favorite new restaurant. Her voice was steady, but her eyes kept shifting, like she was afraid to meet mine too long. When she left for work, I sat in the silence of our kitchen, the air heavy with her perfume. I thought about every time I'd trusted her late-night excuses, every client dinner, every extra hour at the office. All of it was part of the same lie. That afternoon, I stared at our wedding photo on the shelf. I had believed that picture meant forever, but forever was breaking right in front of me. I made one promise to myself. I wouldn't confront her yet. I would be patient. Revenge, I decided, works best when the truth does the talking. Parent-teacher conference night came faster than I expected. Rachel said she couldn't go. Too much work. I went alone. I told myself it was for Lily, but deep down, I wanted to see him. The hallway smelled like chalk and old paint. I could hear other parents chatting through open doors. Then I saw him, Mr. Carson, standing beside Lily's art project, smiling like he didn't have a secret tearing my world apart. Mr. Miller, he greeted, extending a hand. I shook it, firm enough to make him flinch. Thanks for taking such good care of Lily, I said evenly. His eyes flickered. She's a wonderful student. I bet she is, I said, keeping my gaze steady. Her mom says you two have been spending time on her project together. He hesitated just a second, but it was enough. Yes, just helping her with some ideas. Good, I said, letting my hand linger before pulling away. I like to know the people shaping my daughter's world. For a moment, we stood in silence. The noise of the school faded. I saw sweat forming near his temple. He knew I knew. I smiled, polite and sharp. Have a good night, Mr. Carson. He nodded stiffly. You too. As I walked out, my pulse slowed for the first time in days. He looked rattled. That meant control had shifted, even slightly, back to me. Outside, under the streetlight, I took a deep breath. The air felt cleaner. I still had work to do, but now I wasn't the one in the dark. Days later, more reports came in from a keylogger. Dozens of new emails, secret messages, photos sent late at night. Every word felt like another nail in the coffin of life I thought I had. One photo caught my eye, hidden inside her work directory. It was called Trip Notes. I opened it, expecting travel receipts or project files. Instead, I found photos. Rachel in a hotel robe, smiling at the camera, and in the mirror behind her, blurred but unmistakable Mr. Carson. My hand shook. I saved every image, every message, every timestamp. That evening, Rachel made pasta for dinner, humming softly. She poured me wine, asked about my day. I answered, calm as ever, playing my role. She kissed me goodnight and went upstairs early, saying she was tired. I sat at the table long after she slept, scrolling through the evidence. Every picture, every email painted the same truth. The woman I loved had been living a double life. Our life on one side, her fantasy on the other. But as the shock settled, something inside me shifted. I wasn't broken anymore. I was focused. If she could pretend, so could I. Tomorrow I decided I'd start collecting proof properly. Clean, legal, undeniable. No shouting, no threats. Just quiet, steady preparation. Because when you plan revenge on someone who thinks they're smarter than you, patience is the sharpest weapon you have. The days that followed felt like living in a movie where everyone else knew their lines except me. Rachel laughed at breakfast, texted during lunch, and kissed me goodnight. Every act, every gesture was rehearsed. But now I played my part too. I smiled, I joked, I pretended. Meanwhile, my phone filled with screenshots. I created folders, labeled dates, even printed copies. I made sure that when the time came, no one could twist the story. One night, as we brushed our teeth, Rachel said, "You've been quiet lately." "Work," I replied. "Deadlines." She nodded, her reflection calm in the mirror. "You worry too much," she said, and then she kissed my cheek. Her lipstick left a faint mark, like a stain I couldn't wash off. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. I thought about how lies could sound so gentle, how betrayal could wear the same perfume you used to love. I opened my phone again, scrolling through her messages until my eyes blurred. She had written to him just hours before, "Can't wait to see you again. He still doesn't suspect." I smiled faintly. She was wrong. The game had started, and this time I was the one keeping score. I heard her whisper more than once. One night, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she answered the door. She spoke low into the line, voice soft and careful, like she was sharing a secret with someone she loved. I was at the sink, washing a dish, and the sound of her words slipped under the door of my life and into my chest. "He has no idea. You're the only one who makes me feel alive." I heard her whisper. For a second time, that week the ground beneath me shifted. I froze, the dish soap suds cooling against my fingers. I could have walked into the living room and grabbed the phone. I could have shouted, but I didn't. I wanted that voice on tape. I wanted proof that would not bend or break when she explained away a moment or blamed stress or grief. I wanted something that would show the truth to Lily, to the school, to anyone who needed to know. When she returned to the kitchen, humming like nothing at all had happened, I kept my face calm. "Long day?" I asked. She nodded and kissed my cheek like she always had. I played the part of the husband who knew nothing. Inside me, something had turned precise and cold. I promised myself I would not ruin my case with a single rash step. That night, I set the recorder on the shelf where it would pick up the smallest sound. I could have used a better device, but it would do. I wanted all the little things, the laugh, the quiet calls, the names that kept appearing in her messages. I wanted to hear her say the things she had whispered in private and deny in public. I wanted to gather truth like coins from a riverbed, until there were too many to ignore. At 2 a.m, I replayed the small moments. Her breath, a laugh, the hush of a secret. The whisper came again, clearer this time, because I had moved the recorder closer while pretending to sleep. "He has no idea," she said, then a soft laugh. My chest clenched so hard my teeth ached. I closed my eyes and let the sound sit there, heavy and real. I had the whisper. I had the proof. But I also had a new weight. How to use it without breaking every life around me, especially Lily's. I breathed and tried to plan like a man who builds bridges, clear, careful, and strong, so they would not fall on the people I loved most. I called Principal Ward the next morning. My voice was steady, the way I sounded when I signed checks or met with subcontractors. I did not tell her everything. I did not tell her about the keylogger or the recorder. I said only what parents say when they are worried. I'm concerned about a teacher-parent boundary. Her pause told me she was listening and taking it seriously. She asked me to come in. I agreed. Sitting in her small office, I watched the principal's face shift. She was proud of the school, proud of its teachers. She did not want scandal. But she was also a good person who heard the worry in my voice. We will look into it, she said quietly. Discretion, of course. I left the office feeling like a man who had thrown a small stone into a deep pond and watched ripples move outward. I knew the school would move slowly, but the seed was planted. At home, I kept playing my role. I fixed a leaky faucet while Rachel folded laundry. I smiled at Lily when she ran into my arms. I did small things that made our house feel like a home on the outside, while I tried to tear the lie from the inside. It was a strange life, to mend and to break at the same time. I felt like a craftsman building something that had to be perfect and fragile. That afternoon, a file from a keylogger showed up in my email with a timestamp. There was again a message that read like a promise. Can't stop thinking about last night. The words hit like a punch. I printed that email and a dozen others. I put them in a manila folder labeled School Concerns. I dated everything. I wrote notes in the margins. Each printed page felt heavier than the last. At dinner, Rachel spoke about Lily's violin lesson, about new paint colors for the living room. She asked me about my day. I told her about the bank meeting, about a delivery. I kept my voice even and my hand steady. She smiled and reached across the table, resting her hand near mine. I did not touch it. Lily laughed and asked for more pasta. I served it with mechanical, steady hand. After Lily went to bed, I sat at my desk, the manila folder open under the lamp. The printer hummed softly, the pages whispering like witnesses. The folder filled with email printouts, photos, notes. Each piece of paper had a weight that told me I was close to the edge of something that could change everything. I was not a cruel man. I was a man who had been betrayed and who wanted the truth to come out clean and clear, with as little damage to the innocent as possible. Days passed in a blur of small, careful moves. I watched Rachel in ways I never had before. I became a patient man. Seats at the theater where I learned the timing of her steps and the voices she took on calls. I tracked her phone habits, the evenings she left, the nights she stayed out. Each return from a late meeting now felt like a chance for discovery. One evening she walked in with lipstick on her collar. She tried to wipe it away when she saw me watching, but the smear was stubborn. Client meeting ran late, she said. Her voice was flat. I nodded and said nothing. I didn't want to give her the gift of denial. She ate quietly and excused herself early, saying she had a headache. I watched her go upstairs and felt like a man who had been given a second sight that hurt as much as it helped. I hired an investigator, quietly and in cash. I told him to be careful. No flashy moves, no public drama. He was a kind man named Joe who knew how to be invisible. He followed them for a few days, took photos from a distance, documented hotel check-ins, and noted faces. When he finally called me with a report and a few grainy pictures, I felt both nauseous and relieved. The images were not perfect. A blurred embrace in a taxi, a shadowed kiss in a doorway. But they said what I could not bear to say aloud. I kept half my life in the light and half in the dark. I took Lily to violin practice. I cheered at the soccer games and bought Band-Aids and told corny jokes. At night I sat with the folder and the photos, arranging them like pieces of a puzzle. I made copies, numbered them, and stored them in a locked drawer. I wanted to be ready for the moment when truth would need to be shown to others who could make it stick. Through it all, I felt a strange pull, love for my daughter, and a hardening toward the woman who had made our home into a stage for her secret life. The house felt twice lived, the place where Lily laughed and where lies lived. I decided I would not let the lies take the life that belonged to my daughter. The keylogger kept feeding me more messages. I found an email with travel plans, 2 names, dates, a hotel reservation, matching the photos Joe had sent. I printed everything and added it to the folder. The house became a map of proof. I knew hotel numbers as if they were phone numbers I might need to call in an emergency. I counted the nights and felt a slow rage, the kind that does not flare but burns steady and deep. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Holloway from the PDA at the grocery store. She hugged me like someone who knew my face from school events. "How is Lily?" she asked. Her kindness felt like a small lifeline. We chatted about the bake sale and the upcoming play. I kept the talk light, but I watched her face the whole time, looking for any hint of suspicion. I wanted allies quietly, people who care about children and would do what was right. That night, I reached out to a divorce attorney. I had planned to speak only about counseling and advice, but when the attorney heard my slow, careful words and the folder on my desk, she did not hesitate. "Document everything," she said, "and no contact between them and Lily without supervision." The words cut clean. I felt relief and a sorrow that pulled at my ribs. I didn't want to tear our family apart, but I wanted to keep Lily safe. The lawyer drafted papers I did not sign yet, protection measures, custody plans, notes about evidence. I stayed up late that night, looking through the photos and messages again. The images were small and grainy, but true. I saw Rachel's profile in a hotel mirror, saw Mr. Carson's hand on her back as they hurried into a doorway. I pictured Lily drawing pictures of her mother and the teacher, unaware of what had happened behind the scenes. It hurt in a way that nothing had before. I understood then that this was not only my pain. It belonged to my daughter too, and she deserved a life where her world did not fracture because of other people's choices. The dash cam idea came to me in the middle of the night. I wanted something that could not be called fake, a picture that showed motion and voice and time stamped truth. I bought a small dash cam that looked like a simple charger and slipped it into Rachel's car while she was at the grocery store. It fit into the cigarette lighter slot like it had always been part of the car. I felt guilty, but the guilt was tempered by a sense of duty to protect Lily. A few nights later, it paid off. At 8:42 p.m., a file uploaded to a cloud folder I had set up under fake account. The cam had recorded the street, car lights, the hotel sign. At 8:50 p.m., a passenger door opened and Mr. Carson slid into the seat. The footage showed them kissing, laughing, and then Rachel checking her phone before they drove away. It was not a still photo. It was movement and sound. I watched with my hands clenched into fists, hearing their voices through the small speaker, like a radio, in another room. When the video ended, I felt a numbness and a terrible clarity. The proof was clean and sharp. There could be no defense that night. I saved copies to multiple places and labeled them with dates and times. I felt like a man who had built a ladder rung by rung until it reached a place where truth sat. I played the footage for Joe, the investigator, and for my attorney. They both nodded the way people do when a plan finally finds its piece that fits. "This is strong," the lawyer said. "This will hold up." Joe looked at me and said quietly, "You did good. You kept it careful." I slept poorly that night, but I slept with a small thing like a stone finally placed in a jar. I had found a way to protect Lily, to show the truth without shouting it into the street. I had a slow, steady plan now. The rest would be about timing and keeping innocent people safe, while the guilty answered for what they had done. I sat in the dark living room watching the video again, the screen glow lighting my hands. There was no doubt left. Rachel's face turned toward Mr. Carson's, their kiss slow and easy like they'd done it 100 times. I paused the frame and stared at it. The reflection in the windshield showed the hotel sign behind them, clear as a confession. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The world didn't explode. It just fell silent. I expected rage, but all I felt was a strange calm, the kind of calm that comes before you do something you can't undo. I thought about Lily sleeping down the hall, her school project spread across the floor, Mr. Carson's handwriting on her feedback sheet. My daughter's world and mine were tangled in the same lie. The thought made my chest ache. I copied the footage to 3 different drives. One went in my safe, another to my attorney's office, and the third I hid inside an old photo album labeled Family Trip 2018. I wanted the truth guarded by memories that once meant something. When Rachel came home, she smiled like always. "You're up late," she said. Couldn't sleep, I replied. My voice was even, too even. She poured herself a glass of water, humming. I watched her move around our kitchen, the same woman I'd loved since college, now a stranger rehearsing her role. She didn't see the camera light blinking in my pocket. By the time she went to bed, my plan was set. No yelling, no messy scene. The truth would destroy itself once I gave it space. If you want more true revenge stories like this, where betrayal meets justice, hit subscribe now. You won't want to miss what happens next. The next morning, I met with a divorce lawyer named Sandra Klein. Her office smelled of coffee and paper. She looked calm, like someone who'd seen the worst of people and still believed in fairness. I handed her the folder and the USB drive. She watched the footage quietly. When it ended, she looked up. You don't need to destroy her, she said softly. I don't want to, I answered. I just don't want her to take Lily down with her. Then document everything, she said, because she's already destroying you. Those words stuck with me. Already destroying you. It wasn't just about money or marriage. It was about trust. Rachel had turned love into something fragile, something breakable. Sandra walked me through the process. Evidence, custody, assets. Each step sounded clinical, but I wrote every note carefully. When she spoke about witnesses, I mentioned the principal. When she spoke about recordings, I showed her the file timestamps. She nodded approvingly. You've been thorough, she said. That'll make this simple when the time comes. Simple. Nothing about this was simple. When I left her office, the sun was bright, but didn't feel warm. I sat in my car a long time before starting the engine. The folder on the seat beside me looked heavier than before, like it carried all the weight of my marriage. That night, Rachel came home talking about taking a family vacation next month. I smiled and agreed. Let her think life was normal. Let her plan her little escapes. I'd be counting each lie until it matched the receipts she didn't know I already had. I told Rachel I wanted to surprise Lily with a vacation. Somewhere sunny, I said. Somewhere peaceful. She lit up, guilt flickering behind her eyes. That sounds amazing, she said, wrapping her arms around me. You've been working too hard. I smiled and nodded. We'll leave early next month. You handle the bookings, okay? She agreed quickly, almost too eagerly. Her fingers brushed mine as she took my card. I watched her eyes, shiny, nervous, pretending excitement, while she thought she was planning our trip. I was timing every receipt she touched. The hotel she booked for her work trips matched the one in my photos. I compared every email and printout with her statements. I didn't need to confront her anymore. I was building her story for her, one she couldn't escape. Lily was thrilled about the idea of the beach. Will Mr. Carson be there? She joked, and Rachel froze for just a second before forcing a laugh. No, sweetie, just us. I caught that pause, that tiny fracture. When Rachel left the room, I took out my notebook. I listed every date, every charge, every lie. I matched each one to a photo or an email. It was neat, organized, impossible to deny. That night, as she slept beside me, I looked at her face in the dim light and thought about how betrayal could wear such calm features. Her breathing was steady, her body relaxed. Mine was not. Soon she would face everything she'd built and everything she'd destroyed. 3 weeks later, the phone call came while I was at work. Mr. Miller, said Principal Ward's careful voice, I wanted to inform you that Mr. Carson has been suspended pending investigation. We'd like to discuss this privately. For a second, I couldn't speak. The plan had worked faster than I expected. The report I'd filed about inappropriate teacher-parent communication had reached the right ears. Of course, I said evenly. Please let me know when. After the call, I stared out the window at the city below. The cars moved like nothing had changed, but my world had shifted. That evening, Rachel came home early, her face pale. Something happened at school, she said, her voice trembling. Carson's in trouble. I looked up from my laptop, pretending confusion. Really? What did he do? She hesitated, searching my face for a clue. They're saying someone reported him. He might lose his job. That's terrible, I said, keeping my tone sympathetic. Teachers work so hard. People love to start rumors. Her eyes darted away. Yeah, rumors. She sat on the couch, twisting her ring. For the first time in weeks, she looked small, unsure. I watched her carefully, feeling the first quiet wave of justice settle inside me. Rachel's fear grew over the next few days. She paced the kitchen, chewed her nails, jumped whenever her phone buzzed. They said someone sent the school messages. She told me one night, emails, screenshots, stuff about Carson, the parent. I stirred my coffee slowly. That's awful. Did they say who? No. But Ethan, they might contact us. Maybe even ask questions. Then we'll tell the truth, I said calmly. Her silence said everything. She nodded weakly and went upstairs, leaving her untouched dinner behind. I sat alone, listening to the house creak. The whisper started around town soon after. Other parents talked quietly in the pickup line, glances flicking toward Rachel. The smile she wore for years began to falter. Mr. Carson stopped showing up to school. The investigation turned official, letters sent, meetings scheduled. Rachel spent nights on her phone, calling someone who no longer answered. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Lies have long shadows, and hers had finally found the light. Rachel's fear turned into panic. She stopped sleeping through the night. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped. One morning, she sat at the table staring at her coffee, as if it could give her answers. They said the school might reach out to families, she murmured. I folded the newspaper slowly. Then we'll tell them the truth. Her eyes darted to mine. You keep saying that, she whispered. What truth? The one that happened, I said. She froze, her face draining of color. I didn't say another word. I didn't have to. Silence did all the work. She stood up too quickly, knocking her cup. Coffee splashed across the table. I have to go, she stammered. I'm late for work. After she left, I wiped the spill, slow and steady. That brown ring of coffee on what looked like a stain that would never fade, a mark left by something careless. That afternoon, my attorney called. The school's investigation aligns with the evidence you provided, Sandra said. They'll handle disciplinary action, but we're ready for the next step when you are. Not yet, I told her. Let her see what losing control feels like first. By evening, Rachel came home with red eyes. They suspended him, she said. Ethan, they think he crossed a line with a parent. I kept my face calm. Did he? Her mouth opened, then closed again. No, I mean they're lying. Who's they, Rachel? She didn't answer. She just walked upstairs, shoulders slumped, leaving her purse on the couch. Inside, her phone buzzed again. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The truth was finally working on its own. Rumors moved faster than I could have imagined. By the next week, the school parking lot felt colder. Parents whispered near the gates. Some smiled at me. Others avoided Rachel entirely. Her confident stride became a nervous shuffle. Lily's teacher, Ms. Alvarez, pulled me aside after class. We're sorry about the situation, she said quietly. The administration's handling it. I hope your family's okay. I nodded, choosing my words carefully. We'll be fine. Thank you. That night, Rachel slammed her phone down. They're talking about me, she said, her voice cracking. Everyone thinks I did something with him. I can't even go to the store without stares. I sat across from her, calm. Maybe people just misunderstand things, I said. Her eyes filled with tears. Ethan, please, tell me you believe me. I looked at her then, really looked. The woman who once laughed with me now looked like someone trapped in her own lie. I believe people show who they are, I said softly. Eventually, she turned away, shoulders shaking. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. The next day, she stayed home from work, curtains drawn. The silence in the house grew heavy. Even Lily sensed it. Mommy's sad, she whispered. I hugged her tight. It's not your fault, I said. Rachel's world was unraveling one thread at a time, and all I had to do was watch. We attended the school fair together because Lily begged us to. Please, both of you, she said. Rachel agreed too quickly, desperate to look normal. At the fair, family smiled politely, but I saw the way they looked at her, curious, cautious. Rachel clung to my arm, her hand trembling. I let her. I played the perfect husband, nodding, smiling, waving at neighbors. To them, we looked fine. To Rachel, it must have felt like standing in the sun after hiding in the dark too long. Thank you for coming, she whispered. It means a lot. Of course, I said, smiling at the crowd. Family always comes first. That evening, as Lily slept, Rachel came into our room. You're being so kind, she said, her voice breaking. After everything that's happened, you're still here. I turned off the lamp. That's what good husbands do. But I didn't tell her that every smile was for show, that every touch was part of a plan. The same people whispering about her now would soon learn the whole truth. In public, I was her calm support. In private, I was moving my things into the guest room one box at a time. She didn't notice, or maybe she didn't want to. By the time she realized the distance between us wasn't just emotional, it would already be permanent. Sandra called the next morning. Mr. Miller, you've built a flawless case. Adultery, documentation, timeline. There's no argument she can make that will hold up. Custody will likely go in your favor, too. I didn't feel triumphant. I just exhaled. Let's file. She paused. You sure? Once it starts, there's no turning back. I've been sure since the night she forgot to hang up, I said. We filed that afternoon. The papers were stamped and sealed, quiet and official. The process had begun. That night, I cooked dinner for Lily, pasta and garlic bread, her favorite. Rachel came home late again, makeup smudged, hair loose. She smiled weakly. Sorry, long day. I placed the papers face down on the table. We need to talk. Her eyes dropped to them, and for the first time, she didn't pretend. You had this ready, she whispered, since the night you forgot to hang up. Her knees wobbled. Ethan, please, don't do this. I'm not the one who did anything, Rachel. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. This is for Lily, I said quietly. She deserves honesty, even if we don't. Rachel cried for hours. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said. You were distant after your father's death. I was lonely. I stood by the window, looking out at the yard we built together. And you chose our daughter's teacher, I said flatly. She shook her head, tears streaming. It wasn't love. It was just escape. Please, Ethan, I made a mistake. I turned. No, you made a choice. The air between us was thick with the weight of everything unsaid. She knelt beside me, clutching my hand. But I didn't move. The touch that once meant comfort now felt foreign. I'll end it, she whispered. I'll quit my job, leave town if I have to. We can fix this. I looked at her and saw not the woman I married, but the stranger who had rewritten our story. We can't fix something you buried in lies. She sobbed harder. Lily's footsteps echoed upstairs, and we both froze. I motioned for silence until the small footsteps faded again. When Rachel finally stopped crying, she looked at me, her eyes hollow. You're ruining our family, she said. I shook my head. No, Rachel. You did. That night, I slept in the guest room. The sound of her crying filled the house like a storm we both knew would never end. I packed quietly the next morning while Rachel slept. The sound of zippers and cardboard folding filled the silence. Every piece I packed felt like a memory being weighed. Our wedding photo, Lily's drawings, the old coffee mugs we bought that fair years ago. I left most of it behind. What mattered now was my daughter and the peace she deserved. When Rachel woke, she came downstairs and froze. What are you doing? Leaving, I said simply. Her hands trembled. Ethan, please. We can talk about this. Don't just walk away. I have to think about Lily. I said, my voice even. I can't raise her in a house built on lies. She stepped closer. You're ruining our family. I shook my head. No, Rachel. You did. Her lip quivered. Where will you go? Away, I said. Someplace calm. Somewhere honest. I loaded the boxes into my truck. Lily's small suitcase on the seat beside mine. When I buckled her in, she looked up at me, confused. Mom's not coming? Not right now, sweetheart, I said softly. Mom needs some time. As we drove away, I glanced once in the mirror. Rachel stood on the porch, her arms crossed against the wind. The house behind her looked smaller, colder. I didn't feel victory, just relief, the kind that comes when pain finally stops cutting and starts healing. 2 days later, the divorce papers were served. The courier delivered them at Rachel's office. She called me within the hour, her voice shaking. You had this ready? Yes, I said, since the night you forgot to hang up. I was drunk that night, Ethan. It didn't mean anything. Everything you said meant something, I replied. She went silent for a long time. Please don't do this. It's already done. I hung up before she could speak again. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. The line between love and hate had vanished. What was left was duty, to protect Lily and to make sure Rachel's choices didn't become our burden. That evening, I drove to my lawyer's office to sign the final set of documents. Sandra looked at me carefully. You did everything right, Mr. Miller. The court will see that. I didn't do it to win, I said. I did it to stop losing. She smiled sadly. Sometimes that's the only kind of justice that matters. As I drove home to our temporary apartment, I watched the sunset bleeding into gold and gray. I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just tired, and ready for truth to finally stand on its own. The custody hearing came 3 weeks later. The courtroom smelled like old paper and polished wood. Rachel sat across from me, pale and silent, her lawyer whispering frantically beside her. I couldn't read her face anymore. The judge looked through the evidence calmly. Emails, photos, messages, videos. Each piece landed like a stone in still water. Rachel's attorney tried to object, but the judge waved it off. The material is relevant, she said. When the dash cam footage played, Rachel lowered her eyes. Mr. Carson's face flashed across the screen. The hotel sign, the timestamp, the kiss. The courtroom stayed quiet except for the faint hum of the monitor. Rachel's lawyer whispered something, but she didn't respond. Her shoulders slumped. She looked defeated. When it ended, the judge sighed. There is no question of infidelity. The concern now is the welfare of the child. Sandra stood and spoke gently. Your Honor, Mr. Miller has been the stable caregiver, and the child's environment with him is consistent, supportive, and secure. Rachel's attorney didn't argue. He just looked down, folding his notes. I looked at her then, not with anger, but with a quiet understanding that everything between us had already ended long before this moment. The verdict came an hour later. Full custody granted to Ethan Miller. The judge read, Visitation rights to Rachel Miller, pending therapy review. Her lawyer nodded weakly. Rachel didn't look up. I wanted to feel triumph, but all I felt was the ache of something that had once been beautiful dying in silence. When court ended, she followed me outside. Ethan, please, she said, her voice small. Don't take her from me. You took yourself from us, I said. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. You can see her, I said, when you're ready, when you're honest. Her tears caught the afternoon light. I never meant to hurt you. You did, I said softly, but that's done now. I walked away before I could change my mind. Sandra met me by the car, handed me the custody papers. It's official, she said. I nodded. The wind tugged at my jacket. For the first time in months, I breathed without feeling like the air was poisoned. The courtroom felt like a tomb, but outside, the sky was wide and open again. News travels fast in small towns. By the next month, Rachel's name was whispered in hallways, printed on gossip logs, and passed quietly in grocery lines. Parents at Lily's school petitioned against her returning to the PDA. Rachel lost her job 2 weeks later. The email was polite, downsizing, restructuring, but everyone knew why. She called me once afterward. I didn't answer. Mr. Carson resigned and left town. Some said he moved to another state. Others said he couldn't find work again. I didn't care which. Rachel's perfect life The one built on lies and late-night messages collapsed piece by piece. Friends stopped calling. Family kept their distance. Through it all, I kept steady for Lily. I took her to school, helped with homework, cooked dinners, made weekends special. The house was quieter now, but cleaner somehow. Honest. Sometimes at night, I'd hear Lily whisper a prayer for her mom. I never stopped her. She still loved Rachel. I understood that. Revenge wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about truth. And now that the truth had done its work, all that was left was peace. I sold the house that spring. The same walls that once held our laughter now only echoed with what we'd lost. The realtor said it was a beautiful property, and I suppose it still was. But for me, it felt like a museum of lies. Every room had memories, some good, some poisoned. I packed Lily's things carefully. Her drawings, her stuffed animals, her favorite blanket that still smelled faintly like home. When we closed the door for the last time, she squeezed my hand. "Are we ever coming back?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "We're going somewhere better." We moved into a smaller house near the mountains, a quiet place with pine trees and a creek that sang at night. There was no space for ghosts there, just clean air and the sound of wind through branches. I donated most of Rachel's things, the jewelry, the designer bags, the dresses she once flaunted. The money went to a local shelter. I wanted to turn her greed into something good. At first, nights felt long. I'd wake up expecting to hear her footsteps or the faint hum of her late-night calls. But then, silence became comfort. Lily's laughter filled the house again. We cooked simple dinners, watched movies, took hikes on weekends. One evening, she said, "Daddy, I like this house better." I smiled. "Me too, kiddo." It wasn't revenge anymore. It was rebuilding. And in that small, honest space, I started to believe in life again. Months passed. The divorce was finalized quietly, with little left to argue. One day, a letter arrived. The handwriting was familiar, slanted, graceful. Rachel. I turned it over my hands for a long time before opening it. Inside, she'd written, "I'm sorry for everything. I ruined us. Please tell Lily I love her. I understand if you never forgive me. No excuses. No explanations. Just regret." I folded it neatly and slipped it into a drawer beside old family photos. I didn't tear it up, but I didn't read it again either. Some things didn't deserve rereading. That night, I sat on the porch watching the stars. The air was crisp, clear. I thought about how love could turn into something sharp, how trust could vanish with a single lie. But I also thought about growth, how even broken things could take root again. Inside, Lily slept peacefully. She'd started drawing again, bright pictures of mountains, rivers, and us. Just us. I looked at the stars and whispered, "I forgive you," though Rachel would never hear it. Forgiveness wasn't for her anymore. It was for me. I closed the drawer on the letter, on the past, and felt the quiet kind of peace that only truth can bring. Lily was 8 when she asked the question I'd been dreading. We were sitting by the fireplace, her homework spread across the floor. "Daddy," she said softly, "why doesn't Mom live with us anymore?" I looked into her curious eyes, searching for words simple enough for her world. "Because love is about promises, sweetheart," I said, "and promises matter." She nodded slowly, thinking, did she break a promise? "Yes," I said gently, "but she still loves you. That part never changes." She smiled, accepting it the way only children can. Then she picked up her crayons and drew another picture, me, her, and the mountain behind us. No mother this time, just light and color, and a small sun shining over our heads. When she showed it to me, I hugged her tight. "It's beautiful," I said. That night, I tucked her in and stood by the door watching her sleep. Her breathing was soft and even, and I realized I'd built something stronger than revenge, stability. People think revenge means hurting someone back. But real revenge, I'd learned, was living in peace while they wrestled with the choices that broke them. The pain had shaped me, but it didn't own me anymore. A year later, I quit my old job and opened a small photography business in town. I started with weddings, birthdays, and family portraits, moments where people still believed in forever. At first, it felt ironic, me capturing love after watching mine collapse. But then I realized I was drawn to honesty, to freezing moments where truth still existed in smiles and eyes. Business grew slowly. People liked the simplicity of my work, the natural light, the lack of filters, the realness. I took photos of fathers holding daughters, mothers laughing, kids chasing each other barefoot in fields. It reminded me that not every family ended in lies. On weekends, Lily helped me carry equipment. She'd wave at clients and say, "My dad takes pictures of happy people." And for once, I believed her. Every photo I framed became a quiet victory over the man I used to be, the broken one, the angry one. I wasn't him anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I looked at my camera lens at a couple holding hands and thought, this is what truth looks like when it stays. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It had been 3 years when I saw him again. Mr. Carson. The school had organized a charity event, and I went because Lily's art was being displayed. He was there, clean-shaven, thinner, holding a cup of coffee like it might spill. Our eyes met across the room. He hesitated, then walked over. "Ethan," he said quietly, "it's been a long time." "It has," I replied. He swallowed hard. I lost everything for one mistake. I studied him for a moment. The arrogance was gone. What stood in front of me was a man who'd finally met his own consequences. "Then maybe," I said softly, "you'll learn what it costs." He nodded, his eyes full of something like shame. "I'm sorry. Truly." "Be better," I said. "That's all that matters now." He walked away slowly, blending into the crowd. I felt no anger, no victory, just a quiet sense of closure. When Lily's painting won a small prize, I clapped until my hands hurt. The applause, the lights, the sound of her laughter, all of it drowned out the past. The ghosts were finally gone. Years slipped by like slow pages in a book I had already read too many times. Lily grew taller, surer. Her laughter filled every room, softening the memories that once felt sharp. Rachel wrote occasionally, short messages that arrived like echoes. "I'm sober now. I found a small apartment. I'm trying to be better." I never replied. I didn't need to. Some wounds closed quietly without reopening. One evening, another message arrived. It wasn't long. "You saved me by walking away." I stared at those words for a while. They didn't bring anger, only peace. Maybe she finally saw the wreckage she'd made. Maybe she didn't. But she had faced it. And that was enough. I sat on the porch, camera resting on my lap, watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard. The sky turned orange and then deep blue. The soft click of my camera caught her silhouette mid-laughter. That photo I knew would never leave my wall. I realized then that forgiveness didn't mean letting someone back in. It meant releasing their grip on your peace. Rachel had her life now, smaller, quieter. And I had mine, simpler, honest, and whole. The hurt had turned to lessons. The betrayal had turned to clarity. Love had become something quieter, steadier, something I could finally trust again. Lily's graduation came on a warm June morning. The schoolyard was filled with proud faces and flashing cameras. I stood near the front, camera in hand, watching her walk across the stage in her blue gown. She smiled radiant, confident, so sure of herself. Rachel sat at the far end of the bleachers. I saw her, but didn't approach. She looked older, gentler, the fire of her old pride replaced by something humbler. When Lily hugged her afterward, I stepped back and let them have that moment. It wasn't mine to take. As the crowd cleared, Lily ran to me, her diploma fluttering. "We did it, Dad." I laughed and hugged her tight. "You did it, sweetheart." She pulled back, smiling. "Are you proud?" "More than you'll ever know." That night, back home, I looked through the photos. Her smile, her steps, her light. I whispered to the empty room, "You'll never know how close I came to breaking." And for the first time, I didn't mean it in pain. I meant it in gratitude, that I'd survived, that I'd built something stronger from what was meant to destroy me. The studio was quiet the night I finished the last photo series. Families, laughter, truth captured in frames that told more about healing than about heartbreak. On the wall hung one photo I kept for myself. A sunset reflected on a sheet of glass, half shadow, half light. Below it, a small caption I'd written, "Truth hurts, but lies destroy." I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't bitterness that filled me anymore. It was peace. Life had come full circle. The man who once drove through the night, shaking with betrayal, now stood steady, content in the quiet hum of his new beginning. Lily's laughter drifted in from the next room as she packed for college. "Don't forget to take pictures of me moving in," she called. "I wouldn't miss it," I said, smiling. As the sky outside faded to gold, I lifted my camera and captured the view one last time. The light falling on the empty chairs, the soft glow across the wooden floor. It wasn't just a picture. It was the ending of one story and the quiet start of another. I set the camera down and whispered to myself, "Some truths break you just enough to rebuild you right." And with that, I turned off the lights. Please subscribe and share this video.